Reading this morning, it is powerful. It's filled with emotions, and it is Joseph who brings forth those emotions. The moment of his emotion stands out more as we think of the fact that Joseph has not stricken us as a one with expressing emotions much throughout the whole series. And here are some flashbacks of Joseph that we remember so far from the past weeks. So he was a conscientious young man who stood out for what he believed to be true. Do you remember his story with Potiphar's wife? And we can also note that when he was going through hardship in the prison, in dungeon prison, we are never told that he was whining or complaining. He did not show much of his emotions, even at these difficult and unfair times. Then how was Joseph when he first met the brothers after 22 years, when they came down to Egypt for food for the first time? We begin to see something different. At least apparently, he was beginning to show his emotion. To begin with, Joseph was not kind with them. He was stern. In fact, Joseph cornered the brothers by accusing them as spies. And he was being blunt about it. Say, you are spies. You've come to see the nakedness of the land. And he seemed to be even harsh when he tasked them to bring Benjamin with them, while holding Simeon, one of the elderly brothers, in custody, in prison. So looking at that piece of the story, we may think Joseph is upset. He is upset with the brothers because of their infidelity to him in the past. Or we may think that Joseph holds hard feelings against them. And we may think that's where he stands with the brothers. And yet, deep inside, he has much care about them. He isn't harsh. In their first meeting after all of those years, in 22 years, Joseph secretly wept upon seeing the brothers' remorse for what they did to him. When Joseph met with Benjamin the second time, his younger brother, he secretly wept too. But this time around, Joseph could not hold it up. He burst into tears as he reveals himself to the brothers. And is now showing what is held in him about how much he cares about them. And that's powerful. I said this last week, and I'd like to repeat this. So Joseph sets up various tests for the brothers, but behind the seemingly harsh test, he's waiting for the brothers with his keen desire to reunite with them. He's waiting on the brothers with mercy, love, and an offer for forgiveness. And yet he has not revealed his identity to the brothers up until now. And do we know why? Can we guess why? And I think it's because he wants their reunion not just among the brothers by blood, but also as brothers who can step forward for one another. He wants true brotherhood where they share and look to the same value of integrity, of treating others with a good heart. Now Judah, the leading brother of the 10, protects Benjamin like his younger brother is more important than himself, with other 9 brothers humbling themselves before Joseph. And Joseph is moved deeply by that. And he now knows that it's time to reveal himself. And as he does, he is filled with emotions. And here's my question for you. Have you experienced an overwhelming love or compassion from someone? And it felt like mercy that had no limit. I think that's really rare to experience. Even between close friends, family members, and married couples. It is rare. Maybe when we are kids, our parents would care for us in such a way, but we really can't remember that much because it was when we were young. And yet, we get to see a snippet of what's like. In our reading of this morning of Joseph forgiving the brothers, it's like mercy or compassion that has no limit. So what does he do? Instead of blaming the brothers, Joseph treats them so gently. He put aside all the flaws that they had in the past, like they were nothing. He could have pointed his finger at them and say, "You abandoned me as a slave down here in Egypt." But instead of doing or saying that, he repeatedly says, "Oh, it was not you. It was not you, but God that sent me." And he says that 3 times. It's not you, but God sent me here. So, no worries. I'm not upset with you. And he says there's a lot contained there, and to unwrap what is implied there, what Joseph is basically saying is, first, you once tried to kill me. That's fine. You abandoned me. That's fine. And down in the road, I found myself in a dungeon prison for years and years and years, and that's fine too. And finally, I become something here that is governor of Egypt. But it took 13 years, and that's fine too. And finally, I'm getting my family back in 20 years, and that is also fine. Everything is now behind. And, try to register that in our thoughts and in our lives. It's amazing to see how Joseph embraces the brothers in that way. Again, he takes away every blame, and he does so even the brothers brings up the matter. He is being so thoughtful. He doesn't even give them a bit of time to beat themselves up and feel sorry. He cuts in there and say, "Don't be grieved or angry with yourselves." And that, to me, what Joseph does there is an overwhelming compassion and love. It's like mercy pouring down on us and carrying away the heavy yokes from our necks. And he goes on to say that everything about it was part of God's plan and wisdom. It's about God's providence. He says, "God sent me before you to preserve life." He ascribes everything to the Lord. He's saying he had to be in Egypt so that he could become governor, so that he could store food for people, and so that would eventually save his own family too. And he's seeing the goodness that brought out of all the setbacks in the past. And what we see from Joseph is a glimpse of what the Lord's compassion and mercy are like. If we look at the story in a deeper sense, actually in the deepest sense, it's about the Lord. It speaks of the Lord when it comes down to Joseph. As we've seen, Joseph represents the Lord, but when we say that, it doesn't mean that Joseph was and is the Lord. he represents the Lord, and that means Joseph, through the story and in the story, shows us an aspect about the Lord. And here he is showing the Lord's divine compassion and what's like. Then why don't we talk about us? Wouldn't it be amazing to have or to experience that? If we could meet with the Lord in His mercifulness, like the brothers meeting with Joseph in the story, that would be wonderful. But the moment of that breakthrough was made when or after they did their part, when they took the responsibility. That is same and true for us. We often talk about the Lord's unceasing and unconditional mercy and compassion for us. And yet, one core message of this morning, in conjunction with what we saw last week, is our being able to receive the Lord's love and compassion and feel them in our lives comes with our taking responsibility. To be clear, the Lord is always merciful, loving for all, for everyone, at all times. He does not discriminate anyone for it. And we are told as such in a famous line from the Gospel of Matthew, He makes His sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust too. But what we are told here is, there is a difference in how we are able to receive His love and compassion. In other words, there is a difference in how much we can be present in them and appreciate them, even down from our hearts. And let's think of something else here to help us understand that. Let's think of the parable of the prodigal son. I guess we know the story, right? But just briefly, in that parable, the father has two sons, and the younger son, he demands his inheritance from his father when he's not ready and mature. But he ends up taking the money or the lot, and he goes away. He goes away in a foreign country, and there, soon after, he wastes up all the money. And besides, a severe famine hit the land, just like what we saw in our story this morning. And what happens is he winds up living off of pigs' food. And in the end, he decides to return to his father. He remembers how much he himself had when he stayed with his father. He goes back to his father's house, being willing to be with him, not as a son, but as one of his servants. He was desperate that far. And you know what comes next? His father embraces him with compassion and love. He provides him with all that is available for him, and he treats him back as a son. And the point here is that the son has changed. The way he appreciates what he had or what the father had and has for him, that has changed through his life out there. And now he appreciates much more now. So again, the Lord's compassion, His love, it never changes for anyone, anytime. But the way we receive and perceive, that can change depending on where we are spiritually. Back to Joseph. He reveals himself to the brothers. He embraces them. He forgives them. He excuses their evils in the past and say, don't beat yourself up. I'm not upset with you. And again, that came only after that the brothers took the responsibility and realized that they had to humble themselves before the Lord. And we can think this way too. It's like our relationship with others. When we have done something bad or evil to them, and when we have not done anything to fix it, we just can't expect that they will turn around for us and love us back just like before. If they do us that favor, then that would be what's called unconditional love. That would be lovely. And that might happen. But even if that happens, what can happen back to us is that we become ungrateful for their forgiveness and their favor. In other words, we are spoiled. In any relationship we are in, when we are ungrateful and spoiled like that, that relationship does not last long. God, the Lord, is loving, compassionate, forgiving, all the time, always. It's like the sun shines upon us, upon everyone. But we turn aside. We turn away from His face and His love. And I read this passage, but I'm going to read these wonderful teachings of the new church. And this tells us that we, or what we do, contributes to the way we are able to receive and experience the Lord's love. Here it is. The same is true of the Lord's intercession for the human race, especially, that means there is more love and compassion received by those with whom the goodness and truth of faith are present. It is because towards them there is divine, that is, infinite love is shown. Towards them there is divine, that is, infinite mercy and compassion. And the Lord is constantly excusing and constantly forgiving because He's constantly showing compassion for those. Wouldn't it be wonderful and so relieving to be able to be in that sphere of the Lord's love? And in order for us to be in that and to feel the love, we do need to be where His love can reach us. And there's a pathway to it, like the brothers had to go down to Egypt to meet Joseph. One of the final thoughts, as we can pick up on as the series is getting closer to the end, is that the series, just like any other story in the scripture, is about our relationship with the Lord. And it teaches us that our relationship isn't one-sided. And this is something that brought up in our last small group meeting on Thursday. We just can't sit down and wish that the Lord sends an angel or two to fix everything for us. No, we would be spoiled. We would not learn anything, nor would grow. And it's just not the way it operates. So instead, we do need to be where we can be present in and feel the Lord's love more fully. And our integrity that we've been talking about, that is exactly the where. It's exactly where we can experience the Lord's love and compassion that has no limit, which is like mercy pouring down on us and carrying away the heavy yokes from our necks. Amen.